The chosen one's fate. The wind howled through the high mountain cliffs, carrying the scent of burning incense and fresh snowfall. Lysander stood at the edge of the temple courtyard, staring out into the valley below. The sky was a deep indigo, the stars distant and cold, as if even they refused to watch what was about to happen. Tonight, he would die. It was not fear that made his fingers tighten around the hilt of his ceremonial dagger. It was not regret that made his breath come short and uneven. It was something nameless, something lurking at the edges of his mind, an unease that had begun as a whisper and had now grown into a deafening roar. Lysander. He turned at the sound of his name. Elder Morvain stood before him, his lined face calm, his silver robes reflecting the moonlight. Behind him, the other elders gathered in solemn silence. They regarded Lysander with reverence, their gazes filled with something that unsettled him. Was it pity? Was it relief? Or was it simply the satisfaction of knowing they would not be the ones to walk into the abyss tonight? The time has come, Morvain said gently. You will fulfill your purpose. Lysander inhaled deeply. He had trained for this moment since childhood, taught that his sacrifice would keep the world in balance. That without it, the god slumbering beneath the valley would awaken, and all would be lost. It was an honor. A necessity. So why did it feel like a lie? The ritual procession wound through the narrow mountain path, torches flickering against the darkness. The warriors of the clan walked in formation, their armor glinting, their expressions unreadable. Lysander moved among them, the weight of his fate pressing against his shoulders. At the front of the group, Elder Morvain chanted the sacred hymns, his voice steady, unwavering. Below them, in the heart of the forbidden valley, the altar waited. The place where countless others had gone before him. Where none had ever returned. Lysander's grip on his dagger tightened. They reached the valley just before dawn. The altar was a massive stone structure, carved with the names of those who had given their lives before him. The sacred markings glowed faintly, pulsing with a strange energy. Lysander stepped forward. He kneeled before the altar, as was tradition. Elder Morvain raised his arms, his voice rising in a hymn of offering. The torches flickered. The air thickened. And then... a scream. Not from Lysander. From the warriors behind him. Before he could turn, the shadows moved. Figures darted through the mist, faster than the eye could track. Blades flashed, slicing through armor, cutting down warriors before they could react. Lysander's instincts took over. He rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding a dagger aimed at his throat. He sprang to his feet, reaching for his weapon. A figure emerged from the mist. A woman. Her movements were fluid, almost unnatural. Her hair, the color of midnight, whipped around her as she fought. But it was her eyes that held him in place, glowing silver, like stars trapped in human form. Come with me, she said, her voice urgent. Lysander hesitated. Who are you? She didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed his wrist, pulling him away just as another wave of warriors surged forward. Run, she ordered. The valley echoed with the sounds of battle. Lysander's mind screamed at him to fight, to fulfill his duty, to face his fate with honor. But his body obeyed the stranger. And for the first time in his life, Lysander ran. Whispers of rebellion. The wind lashed against Lysander's face as he stumbled through the dense fog, his heart hammering in his chest. Behind him, the valley was a battlefield of clashing steel and dying screams. He could still hear the elders shouting his name, their voices laced with fury and desperation. He had abandoned them. He had abandoned everything. Yet, even as guilt gnawed at him, his body did not stop running. His feet pounded against the uneven earth, guided by the woman's unrelenting grip on his wrist. Faster, she urged, her voice barely above a whisper. Where are we going? Lysander panted, struggling to keep up. She didn't answer. She only led him deeper into the mist. They ran until Lysander's legs burned and his lungs felt ready to burst. The sacred valley faded behind them, swallowed by shadows and distance. Finally, when they reached a hollowed-out rock formation hidden among thick, gnarled trees, the woman stopped. She released his wrist, turning to face him. He immediately took a step back, hand hovering over the hilt of his dagger. "Who are you?" he demanded. The woman studied him with those luminous silver eyes. In the dim light, he could finally see her more clearly, tall and lean, dressed in dark, fitted garments that bore no markings of any clan he recognized. Her long hair was pulled back in braids, and a thin scar traced the curve of her jaw. "I am Ira," she said simply. Lysander frowned. "You knew my name back there." "I know many things." He narrowed his eyes. "Then tell me why you stopped the ritual. You may have just doomed the world." Ira exhaled sharply, folding her arms. "Is that what they told you?" Lysander bristled. "It's the truth." "No," she said, voice firm. "It's a lie." His hands curled into fists. "I was chosen for this. My sacrifice is necessary to keep the veiled hunger sealed." Ira's expression darkened. "The veiled hunger is not sleeping. It is feeding." Lysander felt a chill creep up his spine. "What?" She took a step closer, her voice low but urgent. "Your people have been offering sacrifices for centuries, believing it will keep the god from awakening. But that's not how it works. The veiled hunger thrives on those offerings. With every life given, it grows stronger." Lysander shook his head. "That can't be." "Have you ever seen the god?" she interrupted. He hesitated. "No one has. The ritual is sacred." Ira's gaze bore into him. "And yet you were willing to walk to your death without question." Lysander felt something twist in his chest, an old doubt resurfacing, one he had always forced himself to ignore. Ira continued, "The elders knew. Maybe not all of them, but those at the top. They knew. They chose to keep the cycle going because it was easier to feed the monster than to destroy it." His stomach clenched. "If that's true, then why save me?" Ira hesitated, glancing away for the first time. Then, quietly, she said, "Because you're the only one who can stop it." Shadows of truth. Lysander sat against the rough stone wall of the cave, running a hand through his hair. His body ached from exhaustion, but his mind refused to rest. Ira crouched near a small fire she had built, her fingers deftly cutting through dried roots with a small blade. He watched her carefully. "How do you know all this?" She didn't look up. "My people have been fighting the veiled hunger for generations. We've studied its patterns, its nature. We know what it truly is." Lysander scoffed. "And what is it?" Ira's jaw tightened. "A parasite. A thing that should never have existed." He frowned. "Then why does it?" Ira finally met his gaze, her silver eyes burning. "Because long ago, someone let it in." Lysander's breath hitched. "Someone let it in?" She nodded. "The first sacrifice was not an offering. It was a summoning." The weight of her words pressed against him. He had spent his entire life believing he was fulfilling a sacred duty. That he would die a warrior's death, protecting his people. But now, everything he had ever believed felt like sand slipping through his fingers. Ira must have seen the struggle on his face because her voice softened. "You don't have to believe me yet. But I need you to come with me. I need you to see the truth for yourself." Lysander hesitated. "And if I don't?" Ira's expression darkened. "Then they will find you. And you will die. But this time, it won't be an honorable death. It will be a waste." The fire crackled between them, casting flickering shadows on the cave walls. Lysander exhaled slowly. For the first time in his life, he didn't know what to do. The hunters approach. They didn't have long to rest. Before dawn, Ira jolted awake, her body tensing. Lysander stirred. "What is it?" Ira pressed a finger to her lips. Then, she tilted her head, listening. Lysander strained his ears. And then he heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Getting closer. Ira swore under her breath. "They've found us." Lysander's pulse quickened. He reached for his weapon, but Ira grabbed his arm. "No," she whispered. "If you fight, you'll give them what they want." Lysander frowned. "What do you mean?" "They don't just want to kill you," she murmured. "They want to take you back." Lysander's blood ran cold. If they captured him, they would force him to the altar. He would die, and the veiled hunger would grow stronger. Ira moved swiftly, snuffing out the fire with a handful of dirt. "We have to go. Now." Lysander nodded, tightening his grip on his dagger. Together, they slipped into the shadows, disappearing into the thick forest beyond the cave. Behind them, the footsteps grew louder. And in the silence of the coming dawn, a voice called out. "Lysander." He froze. He knew that voice. It belonged to Thane. His closest friend. His executioner. Lysander's heart pounded. He turned to Ira. She shook her head. "If you hesitate, you die." Lysander clenched his jaw. And then he ran. The descent into darkness. The forest was a tangled mass of shadows and twisted branches, each step threatening to betray their presence with the snap of a twig or the rustle of disturbed leaves. The damp air clung to Lysander's skin as he ran, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind him, the voice of his oldest friend, Thane, echoed through the trees. "Lysander. Stop this madness." Lysander clenched his fists. That voice had once been his anchor, the only thing that steadied him when doubt crept in. Now, it hunted him like a predator closing in on its prey. Ira moved ahead of him with an effortless grace, her body weaving through the underbrush like a phantom. "Keep moving," she whispered. Lysander followed, but his mind was at war. Thane had always been by his side. They had trained together, fought side by side, bled for the same cause. And now Thane was here to drag him back to an altar of death. Could he really raise a blade against his closest friend? Lysander. The voice was closer now. Too close. Ira suddenly stopped, pulling him behind a thick tree trunk. She held up a single finger, motioning for silence. Lysander pressed his back against the rough bark, his heartbeat deafening in his ears. Then, a blur of motion. Thane emerged from the mist, sword drawn, his dark eyes scanning the forest. He was flanked by two other warriors, their faces hidden beneath ritual masks. "Lysander," Thane called again, voice softer now. "Don't make me do this." Lysander's grip on his dagger tightened. Thane took another step forward. "You were born for this. We both knew this day would come." Lysander's chest ached. "Then why do I feel like I was never meant to die?" Thane's jaw tightened. "Because fear makes fools of us all." Lysander wanted to believe that was true. But it wasn't fear that drove him away from the altar. It was something deeper. Truth. Ira suddenly tensed beside him. She leaned in, voice barely a whisper. "We can't outrun them forever. We need to get to the abyss before they catch us." "The abyss?" Lysander asked. Ira nodded. "Where the veiled hunger is truly bound." Lysander inhaled sharply. "The abyss. A place only spoken of in whispered legends. Before he could respond, a branch snapped beneath his foot. Thane's head snapped toward their hiding spot. Lysander. Then. A blade sliced through the air. Lysander barely had time to react before Ira shoved him aside, her own weapon clashing against an incoming strike. The masked warriors lunged, their attacks fast and precise. The fight had begun. Brothers turned enemies. Lysander ducked beneath a sweeping strike, his instincts taking over. He countered, driving his dagger toward his opponent's side, but the warrior twisted, dodging with ease. Thane was already upon him. Their swords clashed in a burst of sparks. "Don't do this," Thane growled, shoving him back. "Don't make me kill you." Lysander gritted his teeth. "You think I'm the one in the wrong? I know you are." Thane's strikes came faster, fueled by frustration. "You let her corrupt you." Lysander blocked a vicious slash. "She opened my eyes." Thane's expression hardened. "Then I'll close them for you." The fight was relentless. Every strike, every movement was a reminder of the years they had trained together, how well they knew each other's weaknesses. But Lysander wasn't fighting to kill. And Thane was. A sharp pain seared across Lysander's side as Thane's blade found its mark, cutting through his tunic. Lysander staggered, gripping the wound, but Thane didn't hesitate, he raised his sword for the finishing blow. Ira moved faster. She darted between them, deflecting Thane's strike and driving a dagger toward his chest. Thane barely dodged in time, eyes narrowing at the interruption. Ira stood between them, shoulders squared. "We don't have to do this." Thane scoffed. "You don't get to decide that." The masked warriors regrouped, readying for another assault. Lysander could feel the noose tightening around them. If they stayed, they would be overwhelmed. Ira glanced at him. "We need to go. Now." Lysander hesitated. Could he really turn his back on Thane? Thane watched him carefully, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. Then Thane's voice cut through the silence. "If you leave now, there is no coming back." Lysander exhaled shakily. There was nothing left to say. He turned and ran. The path to the abyss. They didn't stop running until the shouts of pursuit faded into the distance. The forest thinned, giving way to rocky cliffs and jagged peaks. A deep chasm yawned ahead, mist swirling from its unseen depths. The air was thick with a heavy, unnatural stillness. Lysander doubled over, pressing a hand to his bleeding side. This is the abyss?" Ira nodded, her expression unreadable. "This is where the veiled hunger's true prison lies." Lysander peered into the chasm. There was something unsettling about the darkness below, as if it were watching him. Then why does it still need sacrifices? Ira's gaze darkened. "Because this prison is breaking." Lysander swallowed hard. For so long, he had believed that his death would maintain balance. That it would keep the world safe. But now, staring into the abyss, he realized the truth. The sacrifices weren't protecting the world. They were feeding the prison. Strengthening it. Strengthening him. The veiled hunger had been growing, biding its time, waiting for the right moment to break free. Lysander turned to Ira, dread curling in his stomach. "Then what happens when the next sacrifice isn't enough?" Ira's silver eyes met his. "Then the world dies." A deep rumble echoed from the abyss, as if something understood. As if something had been waiting for him to hear the truth. Lysander felt the ground tremble beneath his feet. The veiled hunger was waking up. And they were running out of time. #### Part 4, Love in the Face of Oblivion. The abyss loomed before them, a gaping wound in the earth that seemed to breathe, exhaling mist and the distant echoes of something ancient, something hungry. Lysander's pulse pounded in his ears, his wounded side throbbing with every breath. Ira stood beside him, silent, her silver eyes locked onto the swirling void below. Lysander swallowed hard. "Tell me there's a way to stop this." Ira hesitated, gripping the hilt of her dagger tightly. "There is," she admitted. "But you're not going to like it." Lysander let out a shaky breath. "I think I stopped liking things when my own people decided to sacrifice me." She gave him a brief, grim smile, then turned her gaze back to the abyss. The veiled hunger feeds on the life it's given. But the cycle can be broken. If it's starved, if it's denied its next sacrifice, the prison will collapse. Lysander's eyes widened. "Collapse? You mean release it?" "Yes." Ira's voice was firm. "But only long enough for us to destroy it." Lysander let out a humorless laugh. "Right. Just destroy a god. No problem." Ira didn't smile this time. "You're more important than you know, Lysander. There's a reason they chose you. A reason I had to save you." Lysander frowned. "What do you mean?" Ira exhaled, brushing loose strands of hair from her face. "The veiled hunger doesn't just consume life, it marks those who are given to it. That's why you feel it, why you heard it stirring the moment we arrived." Lysander's stomach twisted. That strange pull he'd felt since childhood. The way the shadows in the temple had always seemed to reach for him. The way the abyss watched him now. It had always been waiting for him. His hands clenched into fists. "So what? I'm already lost?" Ira took a step closer. "No. You're its tether. But a tether can be cut." Lysander met her gaze, searching for any sign of deceit. He found none. "If we do this," he said quietly, "we might die." Ira's lips parted, and for the first time, her fierce composure faltered. "I know." Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Then, a sound shattered the stillness. Boots against stone. The clinking of armor. Lysander turned sharply. Thane and his warriors had found them. ##### A battle of conviction. Thane's sword gleamed in the dim light as he stepped forward, his expression unreadable. The masked warriors flanked him, their hands gripping their weapons. "This has gone far enough, Lysander." Thane's voice was steady, but there was something in his eyes, something like regret. "You can still end this the right way." Lysander took a step back, his heels near the abyss's edge. "And what way is that?" Thane's grip on his sword tightened. "The way it was meant to be." Ira shifted beside Lysander, her body tense. "You don't understand what you're doing." Thane's gaze flickered to her, filled with contempt. "You've poisoned his mind." Lysander exhaled sharply. "No, you have. All of you." He gestured to the masked warriors. "Did any of you ever stop to question it? The endless sacrifices? The way the elders never seemed to age while we sent our own to die?" A flicker of doubt crossed Thane's face, but it was gone in an instant. "I don't need to question," Thane said. "I trust in our duty." Lysander's hands clenched at his sides. "I did too. Until I learned the truth." Thane exhaled slowly, then lifted his sword. "Then I have no choice." Lysander barely had time to react before Thane lunged. Their blades met in a clash of steel, the force rattling through Lysander's arms. The other warriors surged forward, but Ira was already moving, a whirlwind of swift, deadly strikes. Lysander parried Thane's blows, the two of them locked in a brutal, desperate dance. Each strike carried the weight of years of brotherhood, shattered by the truth that now divided them. Thane gritted his teeth. "Do you really think you can kill me?" Lysander's heart ached, but he forced himself to stay focused. "I don't want to." Thane's expression darkened. "Then you'll die." He struck harder, faster, pushing Lysander back toward the abyss's edge. Lysander's foot slipped. Thane's sword came down. A flash of silver. Ira's dagger met Thane's blade just in time, deflecting the strike. She spun, striking Thane across the face with the hilt of her weapon. He stumbled back, his balance wavering. Lysander didn't hesitate. He surged forward, knocking Thane's sword from his hands and pinning him against the ground. Thane panted beneath him, his eyes burning with fury and something else, grief. Lysander pressed his dagger to Thane's throat. But he couldn't do it. Even after everything, he couldn't kill him. He met Thane's gaze, his voice barely a whisper. I never wanted to be your enemy. Thane's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Lysander pulled away, turning to Ira. We have to finish this. Asterisk now. Asterisk. She nodded. Together, they stepped toward the abyss. #### the sacrifice of choice. The ground trembled. The veiled hunger felt them. Lysander took a deep breath, his pulse pounding. What do I do? Ira looked at him, something soft in her eyes. Trust me. She reached for him. Lysander hesitated only a moment before taking her hand. A sharp, searing pain exploded in his chest. Not from a blade. But from inside. The mark of the veiled hunger burned beneath his skin, writhing, resisting. The prison itself fought against its unraveling. Lysander gasped, sinking to his knees. Ira dropped beside him, pressing a hand against his chest. Stay with me. Dark tendrils of energy curled around them, desperate to reclaim its sacrifice. Lysander gritted his teeth. What if I can't do this? Ira leaned in, pressing her forehead against his. You can. Her voice was steady, but her grip on him was desperate. Lysander forced himself to breathe. He thought of his people. He thought of Thane. He thought of Ira. And then he let go. A blinding surge of energy erupted from him, shattering the unseen chains that held the prison together. The abyss roared, the veiled hunger screeching in fury. Then a final, deafening silence. The darkness receded. The abyss was empty. And Lysander was still alive. He gasped, collapsing into Ira's arms. She held him, trembling, her forehead pressed against his hair. He wasn't sure how long they stayed like that. Finally, she whispered, It's over. Lysander's lips parted in a weak smile. I'm still here. Ira exhaled a shaky laugh. Yes. You are. Lysander closed his eyes, exhaustion washing over him. For the first time in his life, he was free. A future worth fighting for. Lysander woke to warmth. Not the suffocating, humid warmth of the temple chambers, nor the blistering heat of the ceremonial fires meant to consume his body. This warmth was different, gentle, steady. Ira. She sat beside him, her fingers curled around his wrist, as if anchoring him to the world. The dim light of dawn painted the sky in hues of violet and gold. The abyss, once a living wound in the earth, was now just a silent chasm. The presence that had lurked beneath was gone. And yet, the world felt heavier than before. Lysander groaned as he tried to sit up. Pain lanced through his ribs, but he gritted his teeth and pushed through. We did it, he murmured. Ira turned to him, her silver eyes unreadable. We survived. Lysander frowned. Something in her voice was off. That's usually a good thing. She hesitated. Lysander, the hunger is gone. But the damage it caused remains. His stomach tightened. Ira gestured toward the horizon. Smoke rose in the distance, thick, dark plumes against the pale morning light. Lysander's chest ached with realization. The city. Ira nodded. When the abyss collapsed, the ritual broke. The elder's power faded. And your people, she hesitated. Some of them resisted. Lysander cursed under his breath. Of course. The elders had ruled for centuries, weaving their lies so tightly into the hearts of the people that even truth felt like blasphemy. Some would refuse to accept it. Others would cling to the old ways, desperate for purpose. And Thane. Lysander's throat tightened. He forced himself to stand, his muscles screaming in protest. We have to go back. Ira's expression darkened. You're still injured. I don't care. He met her gaze, determination hardening his voice. I started this. I need to finish it. Ira exhaled sharply, but she didn't argue. She simply reached for her weapons, nodding. Then let's go. The cost of truth. By the time they reached the city, chaos had already taken hold. Fires crackled through the streets, casting flickering shadows over the once grand temples. People ran in all directions, some screaming, some fighting, some simply standing in stunned silence. The old order was unraveling. And in its place, war. Lysander clenched his fists. This wasn't what he wanted. Not destruction. Not violence. Just freedom. Ira nudged him. There, she said, pointing toward the temple steps. A group of warriors stood in formation, their weapons raised against a gathering of civilians. At the center of them, Thane. Lysander's heart clenched. His once brother stood tall, his armor stained with battle, his face carved from stone. But his eyes burned with something Lysander had never seen before. Desperation. Thane raised his voice, addressing the crowd. The hunger has not abandoned us. This is a test. A trial to prove our devotion. His voice cracked slightly, betraying the strain in his belief. We must reclaim our honor. The sacrifices must continue. Lysander stepped forward. No, Thane, he called out, his voice carrying over the din, it's over. Thane's head snapped toward him. For a moment, just a moment, relief flashed in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by cold fury. You. Thane's fingers tightened around his blade. You did this. Lysander held his ground. I saved us. Thane laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You condemned us. Without the sacrifices, the elders' protection is gone. The city will fall. The world will fall. Lysander's chest ached. The elders lied to us. They were never protecting anything. They were feeding it. Thane shook his head. You don't understand. No, you don't. Lysander took a step closer. We have a chance to rebuild. To break free from the chains they placed on us. To live. Thane's eyes darkened. We don't need freedom. We need purpose. Lysander's breath caught. This was it. This was why Thane had clung so tightly to the rituals, the rules. He had never feared death. He had feared emptiness. A life without purpose. Without meaning. Lysander exhaled softly. We can find a new purpose. Thane's jaw clenched. For a second, Lysander thought he might listen. Then. Thane raised his sword. Lysander barely had time to react before Thane lunged. Their blades met in a brutal clash, sparks flying as steel ground against steel. This time, there was no hesitation. No mercy. Thane fought like a man with nothing left to lose. Lysander fought like a man who had everything to gain. The battle was brutal, each strike carrying the weight of years of brotherhood, of betrayal, of unspoken words. Then. Lysander saw the opening. He moved without thinking, his blade slicing through the air. Thane's eyes widened. The sword found its mark. Thane staggered back, his breath hitching. Lysander caught him before he could fall, lowering him gently to the temple steps. Blood stained the stone beneath them. Thane coughed, a weak, bitter laugh escaping his lips. "Looks like you win." Lysander swallowed hard. "This wasn't a battle, Thane." Thane's eyes flickered toward the city, where the fires were beginning to die down. The fighting was slowing. People were choosing. Not because they were forced to, but because they could. Thane let out a shaky breath. Maybe you were right." Lysander's throat tightened. Then, Thane's grip on his sword loosened. His body stilled. Lysander closed his eyes. For the first time, he let himself grieve. A future worth fighting for. The days that followed were filled with hard choices. Without the elders, without the rituals, the city stood on the edge of collapse. But instead of crumbling, it adapted. People worked together, rebuilding what had been lost. New laws were formed, not through divine decree, but through choice. The cycle was broken. Lysander stood at the edge of the ruins, watching as life took root again. Ira joined him, her presence a quiet comfort. "You did it," she murmured. Lysander exhaled. "We did it." She glanced at him, something soft in her gaze. "And what now?" Lysander looked toward the horizon, where the sun was rising over a new world. One without chains. One without sacrifices. One worth fighting for. He turned to Ira, a small smile playing on his lips. "We live." Ira blinked, then slowly smiled back. And for the first time in his life, Lysander wasn't afraid of the future. He was ready to meet it. The end.